despite the size, you know, and the geographical reach of Cargill, I know that for some of you, you might not be very familiar with all of it. So I just wanted to show you a couple of slides and give you a little bit more background information on Cargill. Cargill is one of the world's biggest private-owned companies. It is owned by two families who migrated from Scotland to the US over 150 years ago. And today, Cargill is present in 70 countries, has 155,000 employees actually, and has more than 150 years of experience. And while Cargill is involved in very many different businesses, the company has a very strong passion for aqua. And that passion for aqua led to the acquisition of EWOS back in 2015. And after the EWOS acquisition, the aqua business in Cargill now spans over 20 countries, has more than 2,000 employees, committed to deliver healthy seafood for future generations. Cargill's aqua business has actually its headquarters here in Bergen. And I'm very proud to say that because that's the first headquarter ever established in Cargill outside Minneapolis. And I'm also very happy to see that our group leader, Einar Vatne, is here in the room today. He's one of the brave men. In general, Cargill has had a very strong focus on inclusion and diversity for many, many years. And we are doing progress to get stronger or bigger female representation in leadership roles in some parts of our businesses. But still, we are far, you know, from where we want to be. And to speed up the progress, Cargill decided to join the Parity coalition, which was formed in December 2016. But before I tell you more about that, I just wanted to point out a couple of facts that show how little progress we've actually made in this question and how important it is that we actually start to do more. Did you know that CEOs named John actually outnumbered the female CEOs in the Standard & Poor's 1500? And did you know that in Fortune 500 companies, women account for only 32 CEO positions? That's only 6.4% of the entire list. And companies with 50% women in senior operating roles show 19% higher return on equity in average. And I think more people mentioned this last study earlier tonight. The most gender diverse companies are 15% more likely to have financial returns above their industry means. And so despite all these studies that clearly show that, you know, diverse teams drive profitability and how important it is, you know, still we are making so little progress. So in December 2016, which I already mentioned, 27 CEOs and business leaders decided to launch the Paradigm for Parity, an organization committed to drive parity across all levels of corporate leadership. And Cargill was one of the first companies to join or to sign on. And today this coalition exists of 60 major companies, global companies, committed to drive gender parity and within 2030. And that means, you know, equal representation of females and male in all leadership positions within 2030. first of all, this is a commitment from the top to not only talk about how important it is with inclusion and diversity, but actually start doing something about it. And the Parity for Parity does have a very clear plan of action. First of all, minimize, or even better, eliminate unconscious biases. All leaders should understand, own, and address all unconscious and conscious biases that might exist in our businesses. Because these unconscious biases often prevent women from even being presented with opportunities. How many haven't heard this comment? Oh, she's so good, but you know, she's got small kids right now, so I don't think she's ready for a leadership role. Well, let that woman decide that for herself. And while the next one, increase the number of women in senior operating roles. So while our ultimate goal is 50-50 within 2030, we do have to set some milestones. We do have to have some near-term, medium-term goals, otherwise we're not going to get there. And the third, measure targets at every level and communicate results regularly. Yeah, set those targets for the business, for the leadership, measure them, communicate, be transparent, hold those leaders accountable to reach those targets. Fourth, base career progress on performance, not on presence. Women might have different values versus men. They might want to prioritize differently. They might want to work differently. So let's look for those, and I think this has been mentioned also very many times today. Let's work, you know, find those ways that enable us to work more flexible. Measure performance, not presence. And the fifth one, identify women of potential and give them sponsors and as well as mentors. Women are not always the best advocates for themselves. Modesty has been taught to women for ages, and it's not a quick fix to change that. So we do need to provide sponsors and mentors to our female talents. All senior leaders should have, this is my opinion, but I think all senior leaders should have 2 to 3 females that they sponsor in the corporate world. Talk about them, make them known, make sure their names are mentioned when those important decisions are made. So, why is this important for Cargill? Well, diverse teams are smarter. Studies show that diverse teams use more facts, they process those facts more carefully, and they are more innovative. Hence, they make better decisions, and they, of course, then drive higher performance. Now, it is, of course, important to emphasize that diversity is about a lot more than gender. It's about age, it's about geography, sexual orientation, ethnicity. It's about a lot more. And if you really want to get the best out of your diverse teams, you need to have an inclusive environment. You need to have an environment where the people can bring their whole self to work and thrive. Otherwise, they will come, they will join your companies, and they will leave again. So also, let's look at the Cargill, or how do we, you know, as a company, approach the Parity for Parity action plan. I would say we as a company, we're still working on our roadmap on how to achieve Parity for Parity within 2030. Oh, sorry. And as I already mentioned, high priority this year will be to roll out unconscious bias training to all our leaders. We will also launch a formal sponsorship program, and we will equip managers to cultivate inclusive environments. So think about this. How do we do business? How do senior leaders behave? What kind of messages are we sending to our female talents? Are we having late dinner meetings, or are we having lunch meetings? Are we allowing for decisions to be made in those late after meetings? Is extensive traveling the norm? Or do we try to limit and role model that and rather use other technology to meet with our teams and stay touched to our teams? And do we respect when people try to put boundaries around themselves? Is it okay to say, I don't want to be on a call at 7, 8 o'clock because that's the time when I put my kids to bed? Is it okay to say that, you know, between so and so hours, that's my very important family time. Can you please try to avoid calls during those hours? Of course, sometimes we don't have a choice, we just have to join. But most of the times we actually do have a choice. And how often do we actually reflect on our own behavior? What kind of messages are we sending? You know, and how are these messages, you know, possibly impacting the decision of our female talents to want to pursue leadership roles? Think about that. In November last year, I was present in a women's forum in Cargill. We were about 60 women from across the globe gathered in Minneapolis. And our senior leadership team joined us because they wanted to hear our suggestions for how we can accelerate inclusion and diversity in Cargill. And this is what we came up with. Execute initiatives to support inclusiveness and flexibility for women. And of course, this might vary, you know, depending on where you are in the world. Of course, providing women's bathroom, that's a given in my part of the world, but it's not. It's actually not necessarily a given in some parts of Latin America and Asia, and then we need to fix it. And how do we write those job ads? How do we describe our positions? What kind of wordings are we using? Are we using words that attract females or the opposite? You know, look at the job ad. Is it, you know, highly competitive, you know, early mornings, long hours, extensive traveling, superior knowledge of this? You know, that is not what attracts females. I don't think that is attracting for most of them. Think about and are those the things that we really want to highlight about their position? Or is there other things that are more important? Think about that. Measure, communicate, and hold leaders accountable for our progress towards our inclusion and diversity goals. So I think I mentioned it already, but you know, we are in different stages, but I think it's so important that we establish goals both for businesses and for leadership, and that we make this a need to have and not a nice to have. Finally, begin a program to establish a fundamental culture change to emphasize and prioritize inclusion and diversity to Cargill, to the level Cargill does around safety. And you might not know that, but safety is so important. It is, of course, important, and it's extremely important in Cargill. We want all employees to get home safely every day. So we have a extreme focus on driving a safety culture. We talk about safety every day. We measure safety every day. Our CEO wants to be the first CEO in Cargill without any fatalities in 1 year. When you have 155,000 employees in 70 countries, that is a bold statement. And we think that if we're going to reach this goal in 2030, we need to create a gender parity culture. We need to get that same kind of attention if we really want to see progress. We are on a journey in Cargill, and then there are many challenges still for us to overwin. However, we have the commitment on the top. Our CEO, David McMillan, and his leadership team is committed. Einar Vatne and his leadership team are committed. And that makes me feel very comfortable and actually positive about our future, and that we're actually going to reach that goal within 2030. So before I stop, I just wanted to leave you with one question for your own reflection. Who do you sponsor? Thank you very much.